This is a Fox News alert. President Trump refusing to back down in his border battle to build the wall. Trump issuing the first veto of his presidency to overrule a resolution that blocks his national emergency declaration at the border.
The protection of the nation is my highest duty. Yesterday, Congress passed a dangerous resolution that, if signed into law, would put countless Americans in danger, very grave danger. It is definitely a national emergency. Rarely have we had such a national emergency. Therefore, to defend the safety and security of all Americans, I will be signing and issuing a formal veto of this reckless resolution. And Congress's vote to deny the crisis on the southern border is a vote against reality. It's against reality. It is a tremendous national emergency. It is a tremendous crisis. People hate the word invasion, but that's what it is. It's an invasion of drugs and criminals and people. Congress has the freedom to pass this resolution, and I have the duty to veto it, and I'm very proud to veto it.
So, Mr. Gutfeld, I watched this press conference in full, and I think he stole one of your lines.
What did he say?
He said they were border deniers.
Ooh.
And then even reality deniers, I think. What do you think? You think he's watching the Five?
Maybe, perhaps. I don't think he watches much Fox, though. When you look back at an era growing up, the 90s will be grunge, the 80s acid wash, the 70s Jimmy Carter. This era is going to be the wall. Because I feel like that's every day we're always talking about the wall. It's part of his kind of, like the bigger picture, which is safe at home, an appreciation of law enforcement. So you have a lot of the police there. You have trying to eradicate the terror threat, and you have the military buildup. So all of these things are part of one vision. So he tends to see it as that, and other people see it as fear-mongering, because that kind of belief can be seen as fear-mongering. You want a strong military, you want a wall, you want law enforcement that says, oh, my God, you're scaring people. So, unfortunately, something that he believes in can be recast as something wrong. They brought up a fact in there that made me think about the other half of this story. The number one leading cause of death for people under 50 was, they said, drug overdose. One of the officers said that there. So I was thinking, well, what about that? The fault isn't in the dealers alone. The drugs keep coming because we keep using. And I think there's a refusal to admit that often the drug war doesn't make things any better. We're seeing this with the opioid mess, where we're reducing the legal ways to get opioids, and that ends up in overdoses on fentanyl, which one of the gentlemen spoke about his son dying on fentanyl. So we still haven't addressed maybe the underpinnings to this story, which is our desire for oblivion.
That's right. People like to get zonked out of their minds. And,
Great summary.
You've done it.
Yes.
You've done it. You've done it. I'm sure Juan's done it.
Great summary of my point.
Yeah, right.
Juan, now, speaking of zonked out of their minds, Nancy Pelosi says she is going to hold a vote to overturn this veto, but she needs, I guess, 2/3 of the Senate to uphold the override, and that's just not possible mathematically. So where do we go from here?
Not at the moment, but what we saw was a tremendous number. I think it was 13 Republicans who voted with the Democrats in the Senate. And so what you're getting there is not a veto-proof majority, but you're getting in that direction.
Right.
And what you've got to understand here is that you have essentially a manufactured crisis.
Juan,
you have 50. Remember, I'm zonked out. I'm zonked out.
No, it's not.
Yeah, you are. I know, because in Trump world, I'm zonked out. So allow me to speak.
Okay.
But you get 58 national security officials saying this is not right, don't do it. You have, in terms of the polling in the country, 64% oppose the emergency declaration, 58% oppose the wall. This isn't close, folks, but for Trump, it's all about Trump and Trump's political promises.
I'll hit you back with that one.
I'm shocked. I'm amazed that we're here on day 30 of the national emergency.
Those 50
Cover your head.
people were mostly Obama people. And if you listen to the actual sheriffs, if you watch the press conference, they don't say it's manufactured. They say there's a huge crisis, Lisa.
That's why all those Republicans voted.
And they invited a lot of these congressmen and women and senators to come down and see it for themselves before they cast their next vote.
Well, and Juan, you are zonked out, my friend, because even President Obama in 2014 was talking about the crisis we had along the border. He did so in the Rose Garden. He talked about traffickers bringing unaccompanied minors across the border, calling on Congress to do something because we had a humanitarian crisis. That humanitarian crisis remains today. There's been 260,000 illegal immigrants apprehended at the border, 90% since October, 90% increase from last year. ICE is giving pregnancy tests to young girls over the age of 10 because of the amount of rapes and sexual assaults that are experienced along the journey. So, of course, we have a humanitarian crisis. The question is a national emergency the way to solve it? I don't know. But the point being is that what we're seeing right now is everyone exercising their authority under the National Emergencies Act. President Trump has broad authority to declare a national emergency under the act. Congress also gave themselves the authority to try to rescind that national emergency. President Trump has the authority to then veto, and then Congress can try to find the votes, 2/3 in the House and Senate, to override it. So essentially, everyone is exercising the authority that they have under the act.
What you just said, though, this is not the caravan. This is not like someone invading our country, Lisa. We have a humanitarian.
But you saw the caravan and called it a crisis first off, Juan. You were the first person.
Yeah, I say I don't. Look, I worry about those folks, but that's so different than talking about an invasion where you send troops and you declare national.
People die no matter what you call it. People die.
By the way, never has any national emergency been declared to get around the fact that Congress won't fund. This is an exceptional.
Well, then why did they write the act that way, Juan? I mean, did Congress write an unconstitutional act? I mean,
no. They said it's never been done. Is all I'm saying.
Let's get Dagan in here. Dagan. I don't see how this plays out in any other way that it gets just tied up in the courts.
Yeah, it is. It will get tied up in the courts. I think that there were 4 additional states that signed on to this lawsuit challenging the emergency order, bringing it to 20. You could get an emergency injunction that stops this in its tracks for the time being. But listen, Juan doesn't recognize what's going on here with the Republicans because they're not being hypocritical, unlike the Democrats, unlike Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, who basically just sat back and let President Obama violate the separation of powers. Let's go through the list. As the Wall Street Journal editorial board wrote, a blank check on recess appointments, environmental and financial regulations, Obamacare spending without appropriation, work permits for illegal immigrants, and more, all rebuked by the court system.
So that's why
why at least the Republicans who voted against the president are voting based on their concern that the Democrats will then turn around and abuse emergency powers.
Well, that's my point to you. So that what you're saying is he shouldn't be doing
where were you guys when Obama was doing this over and over again?
Nobody's ever, including Obama, ever said, I'm going around the Constitution.
No, Juan,
because guess what? The Congress has funding power.
Whoa. What do you think happened with DACA, Juan? President Obama actually...
That was not about funding.
It was a massive overreach with DACA and DAPA, and DACA got stopped by the courts because it was a constitutional overreach.
It wasn't about the Constitution and
by
funding.
the way, you know why President Trump, at least so far, doesn't seem to be annoyed with these Republicans? Because he isn't calling them names on Twitter yet. Maybe Mitt Romney deserves it for that stupid op-ed and blowing out the birthday candles individually.
You know, he mentioned that, actually. He goes, if I wanted to pressure him, I would have brought the pressure. He goes, I didn't need it because we had the votes. But if they want to see pressure, they'll know what pressure is.
The only reason why we're here is that the Democrats can't admit that they want what Trump wants because they can't admit that they agree with him. We're all talking about the same thing. We want an enforced border, but they can't admit it because that means Trump's right. That's all this is about. It's petty political team sports.
I'm glad you said that because I think Democrats do want it, but I think for the longest time what you hear from Republicans, Democrats don't. But you're right, Greg.
Thank you.
And we have a history here, of Democrats funding this kind of stuff.
I'm not so sure the Democrats
Trump has made it about him and his political promise.
But the Democrats have made it about him as well.
Right.
Let's face it. They've made it about him. He is a large character, Juan, so it's hard not to.
Wait, it was his campaign promise.
Yes, and so they've made it about him.
Well, no, he said
they can't give it to him
because guess what? Republicans in the first 2 years didn't do this, did they?
Yeah, because they needed more votes in the Senate.